3 decades after European powers withdrew from Africa, the continent thought it was free. But that was a lie. Another invasion had begun this time, without guns, without flags, not from Paris, from Beijing. Not through war, but through silent contracts, foreign aid, and disguised resource deals. In Ghana, nation once hailed as the symbol of African independence, over 680,000 Chinese nationals arrived in less than 20 years. No war was declared. Yet rivers turned to poison. Farmlands collapsed into craters, and children played beside pits filled with chemical waste. They called it development cooperation. But the people of Tarkwa and Obuasi knew better. The gold wasn't flowing to a crate, was flowing to Shenzhen. The law is clear. Foreigners are banned from small-scale gold mining. But who enforces it? Who allowed this? Who stayed silent? That silence is now cracking. From fields stripped bare, from fishing towns with no more fish, from villages choked in red dust, an uprising begins. A new generation, unarmed but unshaken, stands up and asks, if we cannot protect our own gold, what are we even protecting? That question echoed through Parliament when 32-year-old MP Mubarak shouted it aloud. And in that moment, Beijing realized Africa is waking up, and the world must now choose a side. Which side are you on? If your motherland was being hollowed out inch by inch, would you stay silent? Write your thoughts below, because truth only becomes power when someone dares to speak it. And if you believe this story must be told, do not scroll past. Share it. Not because Ghana needs help from outside, but because change begins when voices rise from within. In Ghana, there are villages that no longer exist on the map, wiped out by excavators. There are rivers that once fed millions now. No one dares to touch them. And there are young people who once dreamed of becoming engineers or doctors, now forced to mine gold in their own homeland. But when one young member of parliament stood before the house and shouted, "We are being robbed in broad daylight," everything began to shift. That speech did more than echo through parliament. It struck at the dignity of a nation. If you were Ghanaian, would you stay silent or rise and stand with him? They called it strategic investment. They signed contracts, hundreds of pages long, not in a can, not with the involvement of local communities, and never made fully public to the people of Ghana. But the moment the first excavators dug into the earth, people understood this was not development. It was an undeclared conquest. In Obuasi, Ghana's golden heart, there were once dreams of wealth, but when the Chinese arrived, those dreams dissolved into dust. The night markets disappeared. Children coughed through red dust. People drank well water laced with mercury. And the authorities? Most stayed silent. Some bowed. You may find it hard to believe that 680,000 foreign nationals quietly made their way into Ghana. But it wasn't a wave. It was seepage, slow, organized, protected. What began as small-scale local mining, known as galamsey, was slowly replaced by groups with funding, heavy machinery, and foreign backing. In many villages, each time locals protested, a technical delegation would visit the chief. They came bearing gifts, envelopes, and promises. "We'll only stay a few months. When we are done, the land will be returned." But those months became years. The land was never returned. The water turned toxic. The forests were razed. In some areas, locals could no longer bury their dead on ancestral land because it had been marked as a joint venture zone. Some chiefs who resisted were removed. Some investigative journalists vanished. And most citizens learned to be silent to survive. But then silence broke. Mubarak, a 32-year-old MP, was the first in parliament to openly name the truth. Illegal mining, led by foreigners. His speech was live-streamed, and in less than 2 hours, it swept across Ghanaian social media like wildfire. He read aloud. Section 99, Clause 3 of Ghana's Minerals and Mining Act of 2006. Foreign nationals are strictly prohibited from engaging in small-scale mining. Violators face 20 to 25 years in prison with no deportation until the sentence is fully served. The chamber fell silent. The international media stayed silent. But the people of Ghana did not. Clips of confrontations between locals and foreign mining crews began surfacing online. In some areas, farmers built barricades to block excavators. In others, groups of women sat peacefully in front of mining gates. In one school, students wrote on the blackboard, "We are not studying to become servants in our ancestors' gold mines." In China, at first, they denied everything. Then they demanded the removal of fake news. Then came diplomatic pressure, warning Ghana not to disrupt economic stability. But when international civil society groups began investigating, Beijing could no longer hide. Global media began to report. China isn't afraid of losing Ghana's government. It's afraid of losing Ghana's people. A leaked internal memo revealed that several Chinese mining firms had already begun quietly pulling staff out of Ghana in early 2025, after entire villages refused to cooperate and threatened international lawsuits. In Beijing, advisors grew nervous. If the Ghana model collapsed, dozens of African nations could awaken next. But what worried them most wasn't legislation. It was the flame of resistance being led by the youth. No guns. No political parties, just one question. Who gave them the right to mine our gold? And from within Ghana, a new movement was forming, one where young people weren't just asking questions. They were preparing to act. If you were Mubarak, what would you say now to the people of Ghana? If you're a student watching your country being hollowed out, what will you do tomorrow? Do not let silence turn you into an accomplice. Comment, share, and let the truth echo. Because Ghana cannot keep bleeding in the dark. After his explosive speech in Parliament, young MP Mubarak didn't return home. He received anonymous messages. Stay quiet. You'll be removed. Don't go against the money. A week later, his car was followed. The television network that interviewed him received a threat: pull the segment or lose sponsorship. But for the first time in years, the public stood behind a single voice. Not a party, not a minister, but a man who dared ask the question no one else would. Who really controls Ghana's gold? From north to south, the shockwave spread. Student unions began hosting forums on resource sovereignty. A group of teachers published a booklet titled "History Buried Beneath the Mines," documenting over 100 cases of foreign-led mining violations. And for many, it was the first time they realized. Since the year 2000, over 70% of Ghana's extracted gold was never refined locally. Nearly half was exported directly to China, often below global market prices. Not because Ghana lacks the technology, not because Ghanaians cannot learn, but because they were never allowed to own the full value chain. A student in Kumasi wrote, "I'm not studying to become a laborer in a Chinese gold mine. I'm studying to protect my heritage." That sentence was printed on t-shirts. It went viral. It became the banner of a generation. But just as the movement swelled, the pushback began. A wave of so-called independent newspapers suddenly ran op-eds claiming that opposition to foreign mining was undermining development, arguing that Chinese projects created jobs. Analysts began to appear on talk shows, softly suggesting partnerships shouldn't be politicized. But no one forgot. In Tarkwa, 43 children had been poisoned by mercury over the past 2 years. In Dunkwa, over 700 families were forcibly displaced without compensation. In Prestia, a group of villagers was attacked for blocking a truck hauling undocumented gold ore. No one had been arrested. A team of investigative journalists began tracing the money. They found that many mining companies had Ghanaian names, but the directors and technical staff were Chinese. Some licenses had been issued through shell companies registered on paper only. A few firms had received 10-year tax exemptions. Ghana had gold, but not the power to govern it. Then one day, a striking image surfaced online. 12 young men in a Sankrangwa standing silently outside a mining compound, holding a banner. This land is not for sale. No weapons, no violence. Just 12 men, each holding the name of a family that had lost ancestral land. That photo spread like wildfire across Africa. In Nigeria, students organized a forum. Ghana today, Nigeria tomorrow. In Sierra Leone, a poet wrote, "If gold is the blood of the land, then the excavator is the knife that severs the vein." Meanwhile, in Beijing, policy advisors began to worry not just about losing Ghana, but about losing Africa's silence. A leaked report revealed that Chinese officials had quietly instructed mining firms to begin a strategic withdrawal from Ghana and redirect operations to stable nations like Zambia and Angola. But this was not repentance. This was fear of collapse. They weren't afraid of the government, because governments can be replaced. They feared the people because once the people understand, they cannot be manipulated again. And in Accra, the capital of Ghana, quiet conversations had begun. No cameras, no official banners, but something real. A group of young engineers proposed a national gold refinery, entirely staffed by Ghanaian graduates. A team of young lawyers began building legal cases to sue foreign companies, seeking back taxes and environmental reparations. A group of tech students launched a community data platform, mapping mining zones, ownership structures, and violations. They called it Gold Transparency. No sponsors, no protection. But they pressed on because they understood true resistance does not begin in rage. It begins in belief, the belief that change is possible. If you are a student in Ghana, will you study to become a servant or a sovereign? If you are a young African, do you believe gold transparency could spread across the continent? Where do you stand in this story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe this moment matters, share this now so others may awaken just as you have. May 22, 2025. A group of young men near the Kenyasi gold fields discovered trucks moving illegal ore through the night without documentation, without customs checks. They set up a roadblock. They filmed the scene. They called the police. No one came. Instead, 2 hours later, a group of unknown men dressed in unmarked uniforms arrived. They seized phones. They shut down the local signal tower. The only footage that survived was a copy secretly sent out by a young woman before their equipment was destroyed. That video was aired by the last remaining independent television station in Ghana. The nation was stunned, and one question lit up every social feed. Who is protecting the criminals? For years, Ghanaians had suspected there's no way hundreds of gold trucks could pass through checkpoints without special clearance. No way hundreds of Chinese workers could show up in the mines without a silent green light from within the system. Now, suspicion turned to certainty, and outrage erupted. In Kumasi, over 4,000 students marched with banners. "We are not studying to serve criminals." In Tamale, residents built a statue made of fake gold, smeared in red mud, and placed it in the center of the town square. The plaque read, "This gold does not feed us, it poisons us." In Accra, A group of young lawyers formally petitioned Parliament to launch a special inquiry demanding a full audit of financial trails from shell mining companies to personal government accounts. And China? Their response was cold. The embassy issued a statement. China-Ghana cooperation is built on long-standing friendship and must be preserved with mutual respect and restraint. But, behind closed doors, Beijing began calling every key minister in Ghana. A quiet, diplomatic storm was underway. If Ghana shut down its mines, China would lose one of its biggest gold sources in all of Africa. The world began watching. Major media outlets Al Jazeera, BBC, Reuters ran headlines. Ghana faces historic crossroads, gold or partnership. And within Ghana itself, a divide deepened. The conservative bloc, made up largely of long-standing business elites with ties to Chinese firms, argued, "We can't jeopardize our biggest partnership over a few incidents." The reformist bloc, led by youth movements and independent scholars, fired back. "If we have to sell our sovereignty to keep that partnership, then what kind of partnership is it?" A professor at the University of Ghana wrote, "When gold cannot feed the miner, it's not a resource, it's a chain." The debate spilled everywhere into classrooms, churches, marketplaces, and dinner tables. Some feared, if we go too far, they'll pull out. The economy will collapse. Others replied, if their exit destroys us, then did we ever stand on our own 2 feet to begin with? Artists spoke out. Musicians released protest songs like Gold and Ghosts. Poets read verses in public squares. Painters filled city walls with murals of torn forests, and rivers turned gray. One image shocked the capital. A poster plastered across Accra, a dark-skinned child, holding a lump of gold. Behind him, the shadow of a foreign figure retreating. The caption read, "He doesn't need aid, he needs inheritance." Inside the government, pressure mounted daily. Ministers were questioned in public hearings. Some resigned, some stayed silent. Some blamed the previous administration, but the people had run out of patience. They didn't want more statements. They wanted action. And so, on a quiet morning in early June, for the first time in modern Ghanaian history, a private emergency meeting was held at the presidential palace. Not with foreign diplomats, not with business executives, but with young resistance leaders. No cameras, no media. But what happened inside was leaked. A student spoke. "We are not stepping back. We are staying right here because this is our land, this is our gold, and this is our future." This was no longer protest. It was an ultimatum. If you were the president of Ghana, would you stay silent to preserve diplomacy or rise up to defend your land? If you were a mother watching your child bathe in poisoned rivers, would you wait for Parliament to debate, or would you act now? Speak your truth in the comments below. Because when the people speak, history bends. June 9, 2025. No one expected a late evening news broadcast to make an entire continent rise to its feet. After nearly a decade of silence, the government of Ghana made a stunning announcement. All gold mining licenses involving foreign interests were to be suspended effective within 90 days. No negotiations. No prior notice. No bilateral agreements. Alongside this, a new decree was issued. The formation of a National Resource Sovereignty Commission made up of 11 members, 7 of whom were civilians, educators, engineers, and students unaffiliated with any political party. A move no one predicted yet, one everyone had been waiting for. Chinese state media responded with fury, an unfriendly act that threatens long-standing strategic relations. Investors panicked. Shares in mining companies linked to Ghana plummeted across the Shanghai Stock Exchange. And in Beijing, behind closed doors, Officials were shaken because they knew if Ghana could do this, another country would follow, then another, and eventually the whole continent. In Burkina Faso, state media hailed Ghana's move as a historic step, marking the dawn of the reclamation era. In Senegal, thousands of students marched under banners. Ghana stood up. We're right behind. In Zambia, experts called for an immediate audit of 63 mining contracts signed over the past 15 years with foreign corporations. And in Ghana itself, something miraculous happened. The people didn't panic. They celebrated. From the poorest villages to the capital's busiest streets, radios blasted the announcement. Children ran through neighborhoods shouting, "The gold is back! The gold is back!" In Tarkwa, an old woman sobbed in front of her television. "In my whole life, I've never seen the government do this for the people." Her words went viral. They became a meme, a slogan, a song. At that moment, the government could no longer retreat. They weren't just taking on mining giants. They were carrying the hope of a generation. But the decision came with a price. Some aid was pulled. Foreign investment packages were suspended. China's ambassador issued an official diplomatic protest. Still, Ghana did not flinch. The president, once quiet, finally stepped in front of the cameras and said, "We are not against anyone. We only want what has always been ours." Just one sentence, but enough for all of Africa to remember. If you were a citizen of Ghana, what would you do to protect this decision from being reversed? If you were a young African, would you be ready to rise next? Leave your thoughts in the comments and share this story so the world knows. For the first time, a nation set number and the world was forced to listen. August 2025. Ghana entered its rainy season, but in the eastern outskirts of Accra, the sun was rising. Where once lay an abandoned illegal mining site, now stood a fenced-off compound. No more excavators. No more trucks hauling ore under cover of night. No more villagers avoiding cameras in fear. Instead, wooden signs were planted, hand-painted with bold letters. National Mineral Training Center, First Cohort, Ghana's Gold Engineers. No foreign donors. No flags from outside nations. Only students, the same ones who had once marched in protest, now becoming the first generation of resource protectors. They were learning to refine gold, to study mining law, to dissect contracts. They were learning from the pain their parents had lived through. This was not just a technical school. It was the burial ground of an old dependency and the birthplace of an education rooted in true sovereignty. The government of Ghana made a promise. Starting in 2026, any new mining project on Ghanaian soil must be at least 51% locally owned, and 60% of the technical workforce must be trained domestically. At the same time, Ghana launched the National Gold Register, a transparent, publicly accessible database tracking every mine, every license, every transaction, and every environmental impact, allowing citizens to watch, comment, and hold the system accountable. This had never existed before in African history, but the miracle did not end in Ghana. In Liberia, the government began reviewing its bauxite contracts. In Guinea, students launched a campaign called Our Soil, Our Soul. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, a team of young engineers developed a blockchain platform to monitor cobalt mining. A new era had begun. Not dépendant ton aide, not bowed before global powers, but built on education, transparency, and the will of the people. When Ghana stood, it was as if all of Africa awoke. Because gold is not just a mineral. Gold is a test. Will a nation choose the hard path to preserve its soul? Will its young people dare to learn what's not written in any textbook in order to write their own? Can a continent, scarred by centuries of plunder, rise together not to mourn stolen dreams, but to forge a future where each gold bar is not a symbol of theft, but of awakening? The answer does not lie in parliaments. It does not lie in contracts. It does not lie in foreign aid. The answer lies in a classroom in Accra, where a young girl stood before a chalkboard and wrote, "This gold belongs to my ancestors. I will learn to protect it." And when asked later what she meant, she said, "If my parents had to bow their heads, then my generation will stand tall." If you were Amina, the girl with the chalk, what would you write on the board tomorrow? If you were Traoré or Mubarak or any young African dreaming of freedom, what message would you send to the African Union? If the whole world turned its back on Africa and you were the only one left, what would you do? Rewrite the future. Begin with a comment below. And if Ghana's courage moved you, like, share, and subscribe. Not to spread a video, but to spread the truth. Africa is not powerless. It has simply never been trusted.